I heard a lot of people don't like this Monster Hunter review. And I'm looking at the dislike right now. 2.2k that's likes and 2.5k dislikes. Okay. Alright, let's see what they have to say. I'm gonna be honest. You see, I'm subscribed to IGN, but I really don't watch them anymore. You know, every time I got the bell turned on, I really like, they come up in my feed. I don't really watch their content anymore. Let me know in the comments if you do, but it's just me. Not really for me anymore. But let's get into it.
After the massive success of both Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise, it makes sense that Capcom would do whatever it can to welcome that wider audience into the next frontier. That's exactly what Monster Hunter Wilds does, smoothing out the already excellent process of turning big scary dragons into silly little hats to be faster, more flexible, and less fiddly than ever before. The other side of those dual blades, however, is that Wilds is light on any real challenge, even for what I'd expect at launch, never asking me to think hard about my equipment. But while the monsters may not pose much of a threat this time around, smart tweaks to combat still mean the act of carving them up has rarely felt better.
Okay, so far he's saying it's not challenging. Let's see what he has to say.
My first surprise in Wilds was that the campaign isn't just a totally forgettable excuse to kill anything that crosses your path this time. Okay, it's still mostly that as you explore yet another uncharted land to solve some mystery, but while the story itself isn't particularly fresh, the difference here is that the characters within it are actually pretty great. Whether it's the excitable engineer Gemma,
We are so gonna talk later, pal.
your empathetic
Yeah, 'cause
handler
she's
Alma,
hot.
Oh, but I've definitely heard of him.
or the total
she's hot
space
too.
cadet of a biologist Eric,
This forest is amazing.
your team is full of likable personalities and little character arcs throughout the gorgeously animated cutscenes.
See? Told you they'd be fine.
And that was enough to get me more invested. The revamped structure of Wilds also means that campaign is significantly shorter than I was expecting. I reached the credits in just 15 hours and didn't have to fight a single monster twice in that time, getting enough materials from any initial encounters to keep my gear up to snuff and jump right from one mission to the next. When you compare that to the 40 plus hours it took to see the end of the story and world, it feels like the intent is to allow more people to quote-unquote beat Wilds. And I certainly appreciate how that shift toward approachability might appeal to any.
I mean, my playthrough Monster Hunter World, I mean, it wasn't that long. You have to do like, you do come across some monsters that will check you. I mean, it wasn't really that hard, but you know, he said 15 hours. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I got done with Monster Hunter World about this, probably a little bit more. So it's a little bit longer, but not too much longer. It's not like a 50-hour campaign or anything. But, Monster Hunter hasn't really, well, I don't want to say hasn't been, because I only played two, Monster Hunter World and Rise. But just playing those two games, they're not really, about the story. It's about hunting monsters. And the difficulty, like talking about the difficulty, I mean, like, you don't really come across like really, really hard monsters. I mean, during the campaign. Now, after the campaign, yeah, you may come across some monsters that might scurve, scurve, curve stomp you or something. But let's keep going.
Anyone who's been traditionally intimidated by the series. But as a veteran, I can't help but be a little disappointed that I literally didn't get knocked out once in that entire time. There's never a skill or armor testing wall of a monster that forced me to really consider my equipment choices more deeply in order to earn the reward of a hard-fought victory. Avoiding spoilers, there is, of course,
So he's a veteran. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, hear me out. Okay, with Monster Hunter World was like the beginning of this. They already streamlined a lot of stuff. That was the introduction for me, and like going back and my brother actually played the older ones and everything, and just watching videos on it, like you can see that they wanted to streamline that one a lot more. That's probably one reason like Monster Hunter World was so big, because they already streamlined a lot of stuff for like newer players, beginner players, and stuff. So you can already see from looking at the last two games, they're kind of already heading this way, kind of like making the game more streamlined. And, and for that, having new players come in, making it more difficult, making these monsters like super hard or whatever, just because a veteran player. Like, for me personally, yeah, I don't mind the monsters being hard. Okay, but I've played a shit ton of World and a little bit of Rise. Wasn't that big of a fan of Rise. I like some of the new mechanics, but Monster Hunter World, shit, I love that game. I bought it on PS4, then I bought it again for Steam, and I mean, I bought Rise twice, I should say. Sorry, but but for newer players, they're trying to get more players into the game. They want this to be bigger than World and Rise. So difficulty, it's probably not going to be there. Okay. Hopefully, what I'm hoping for now, I know a lot of people, doing these reviews, they can't say really anything about the end game. That's where I'm hoping like we get some pretty chunky monsters, like bosses. You have to consider the gear you're wearing and what you eat and what you carry out there with you. Well, let's keep watching.
more to do once you get past the credits. That's where the larger changes Wilds makes to the traditional Monster Hunter loop really start to shine. Gone are the days of returning to a separate town between every hunt, then going down the same checklist of tasks before you're ready for the next one. Pretty much everything you need is out in the field with you, and you're never more than a lickety-split loading screen away from whichever
I don't mind
area
that,
you want
but
to be in. Convenient adjustments are all over the place, like food buffs being tied to a timer now that sticks around between hunts. It doesn't even tick down while in camp, making a previously repetitive process substantially smoother without removing the depth it added to hunts.
Nothing like home cooking.
The roaringly successful result of those changes is that a vast majority of the friction past games could produce as you start and stop and restart between every encounter has been removed. Now you can just check your map for monster information and go hunt. The monsters you'll face are also generally excellent. That could be a flashy
spiders.
newcomer like the flamenco-inspired Lalabarina, or Wild's headliner Arkveld and its chain-like appendages.
Yeah, I know in the demo, like he was like the hardest boss they had to fight. But I wonder if he was like overtuned or something. Be like, yeah, you can face these other monsters pretty easy. Here you go. Here's a little challenge for you. So they can maybe in a patch, because these reviewers, they get early copies. They don't get like the day one update like every game gets. So I wonder, like, are they gonna tune the monsters too? But like I said, I wonder, like, after the campaign, there are like harder monsters to fight.
But the true stunner has to be New Udra. The tentacles of Monster Hunter's first
Octopus.
octopus-like creature can be as unpredictable to
that
contend
one.
with as you might expect, especially when they're literally on fire. And the satisfaction of severing every single one of them over the course of a hunt is second to none. The appeal of Monster Hunter's fights has always been how it empowers you with flashy moves and hard-hitting attacks, But knowing when to strike and where to stand and how the monster will behave next is just as important as figuring out which buttons to press. That's true in Wilds too, but combat is also more flexible and forgiving here. For example, you can adjust your footing a little more mid-combo, resulting in fewer moments where a mistimed attack with a long animation had me embarrassingly slicing at the air. In many ways, the combat feels like it's all about the new wound system this time. Wounds open up once you deal enough damage to a given body part, and then you'll deal extra damage when attacking them. But deal enough damage to a wound and it'll break, resetting that spot. Every weapon also has a simple to execute focus strike that will deal a burst of damage to a wound and break it right away. So maximizing the amount of time you leave one open and then using that finisher before it closes naturally is an interesting subgame to manage. Or at least it would be if Wilds ever presented me with a challenge that pushed me to make those considerations. Whether I was playing online or solo, I've never had a mission reach the 20-minute mark, and I've only fainted 2 times total across dozens of hours. Compare that to World, which had real tests like Kieran, who smacked me silly my first couple of attempts, forcing me to regroup and craft an armor set around thunder resistance, and it's hard not to feel like Capcom's desire to make this a more inviting Monster Hunter sanded off some of the bumps I actually enjoyed in terms.
I let me know in the comments because I can't remember. It's been so long since I faced Karen. Was he wasn't part of the campaign? He was after the campaign, right? Let me know in the comments. And yes, he was a small check. Like he if you didn't know what you were going in for, and those lightning strikes, it would mess you up. But like I said, that's after the campaign, and that's why I'm wondering, like, for Wilds, like, I feel like the campaign is like an introduction for newer players. You know, you don't want it to be too hard, because if it's too hard, people aren't going to want to play it. They're going to quit really quick, and that's not good for the game. Make the campaign easier, get them in, and like after the campaign, just tell them like, hey, there's more. You want to face more monsters, and be like, oh, these monsters, they're challenging, or they get harder, further you get. So you introduce the new players, and and it just shows the game like this is how you play the game. This is what you do. You hunt. It's somewhat easy. They're going to enjoy themselves. Then after the campaign, here's more. But yeah, you have to pay attention to the mechanics, to your armor, to the weapon, to the elements and stuff. And I feel like that's the way to go about it. Now, listen to like someone like me, I'm not a veteran. I haven't played every single Monster Hunter game, but I'm a veteran when it comes to like the newer ones, like World and Rise. Like I played hundreds of hours of those games. No, me and probably you too, if you played a lot of Monster Hunter, you probably wouldn't mind if the monsters were a little difficult, in the campaign and stuff. But that's come from people who played a shit ton of Monster Hunter. You know, someone new probably won't enjoy that at all. Okay.
Terms of overcoming big threats. Things do ramp up a little bit in the post-game, but even there I only really had to worry about
Okay.
upgrading
Yeah.
my armor or falling behind in damage once or twice during the content that's available at launch. After the 15 hours it took me to beat the campaign, I only had to spend another 15 to finish every side quest that wasn't about catching fish, and just 5 more after that before I had the best armor set and weapon I could get and a pretty solid suite of skill-boosting decoration.
I mean, and he's playing with. These are probably AI. I don't know, but he's playing in a party, and I'm just gonna say, playing in a party, AI or real people, it makes the boss fights or hunting the monsters like 10 times easier. That's why a lot of people play stuff solo and try to beat like the end game bosses solo, because it makes it a lot more challenging instead of being in a party of, 4 or something. So I don't know. Because the reason I say that, because you know, when you're fighting a monster by yourself, the monster is just going to focus on you. Party, well, it has 2 to 3 other people that it can focus on, and plus the palicos too at that. So I don't know. Like, I want to see more in this gameplay, like him playing by himself.
To be fair, I still have plenty more equipment I could grind for, but my usual desire to get the top tier weapon of each elemental type and put together specialized outfits for certain challenging fights just isn't here this time, because those fights aren't here either. I think a lot of this comes down to raw numbers that could hypothetically be tweaked in one of the many patches that are sure to come. But
Yeah.
some of what makes things so easy also seems to be baked into the bones of Wilds. For example, nearly every time you focus strike a wound, the monster gets locked into a little stagger animation, and you'll be breaking wounds a lot. Meanwhile, on the crafting side of things, my hunt for the best armor was
They can probably tune that, maybe, where the wounds won't break as much. So I don't know. I feel like all these complaints can be, solved with a day one patch. You know, the difficulty, the with the wounds and stuff. But some of the stuff is probably like baked into the game where they can't really change it that much. Anyways,
way shorter than I ever expected, because materials that are usually super rare can sometimes show up as guaranteed rewards when looking at the monster list on your map.
more
That was
streamlining.
excitingly convenient initially, but it's also what brought that loot chase to an almost trivially fast end.
Yeah, I can see that.
I imagine
I don't
this
know if I like
difficulty
that too
tuning will get
much,
a
to be
lot more
honest.
people through the front door. But it also means that where my past 3 Monster Hunter reviews wrapped up around the 50 to 60 hour mark while I still had plenty more I was excited to do, I started losing steam with Wilds before I even hit 40. Don't get me wrong, that's still a healthy chunk of game, and it has absolutely been some of the most fun I've had with the series. I'm also sure any longtime fans will be thinking, well, we just have to wait for updates or G-Rank or whatever for the real challenge. But in that regard, Capcom's own roadmap has left me wary.
First free
There's only one
update.
monster scheduled to be added for all of spring, and then only one currently listed for summer. In contrast, Rise also felt slight
I don't
at
know how I
launch, but
feel
got
about
6
that.
new monsters just 1 month later, and then 3 more a month after that. Wilds already feels like it needs
We got a lot of stuff in World, a lot of stuff like in the first few months, first year, a lot of stuff. So I mean, we just gotta see. They might surprise us. You never know.
endgame threats like its formidable elder dragons to really push its limits. And if it instead only gets 1 returning monster in the first 3 or so months after launch, this could be a long wait until its inevitable expansion. That all said, Wilds deserves credit for being what has got to be one of the most customizable games I have ever played. There's a huge host of accessibility features. You can adjust the size of or turn off individual elements on your UI, you have more control than ever over your menus and radio wheels, and you can alter the look of stuff like your mount, chat stickers, and even fast travel tents to a surprising degree. As a crowning touch, you can finally wear any version of each armor set too, essentially doubling the cosmetic options previously available as you get into the all-important fashion side of things towards the end. Partying up online has also been made more robust, letting you run around each map with your friends and seamlessly flow from hunt to hunt without having to regroup at camp between each mission. And even if you're largely planning to play solo, there are quality of life changes here for you too. That could be the surprisingly competent AI support hunters
There he
that
goes
fill
with that
empty
flare.
spots in your party when you fire an SOS flare, but also the inclusion of an online single-player option that lets you fire flares to get help, but still pause the action entirely.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean right there? Like, I don't know how far he is into this fight, but he calls for teammates, and you want to say the game is too easy. That like baffles me. Like, then why do you call for teammates? Why did you do a SOS? The game's easy, right? Too easy. So why are you asking for help right now? I don't know. I was trying to come in with an open mind, but the criticism he's putting in is like, it's very questionable, because the big one was like difficulty. This game is too easy, blah blah blah. But most of the fights we see, he has teammates. The fight the beginning of this fight or whatever, I don't know if it's the beginning, but he's here by
between each
himself.
mission. And
Like
even
he's here just with his Palico, and he
if
calls.
you're largely planning to play solo, there are quality of life changes here for you too.
Then he calls it SOS.
That could be the surprisingly competent AI support hunters that fill empty spots in your party when you fire an SOS flare, but also the inclusion of an online single-player option that lets you fire flares to get help, but still pause the action entirely before you do. Monster Hunter Wilds continues to smooth off the rougher corners of the series in smart ways, reducing as much friction as possible that could get in the way of you grabbing any of its exceptionally fun weapons and planting them firmly in a monster's hide. But in that quest to make Monster Hunter more approachable, Wilds is sliced a little too close to the bone in some places, trimming its challenge back so much that I barely needed to engage with its in-depth equipment system at all this time to become an apex predator. Its more flexible combat is still some of the most fun I've had with the series, but like the blustering lightning storms of its gorgeous desert, it burns brightly but briefly until Capcom unleashes some real endgame beasts to challenge us.
An 8.
For more, check out our
Okay.
reviews of Avowed or Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
I don't know if I can give this video a like. You can if you want. I'll leave the link to the video in the description and IGN. I mean, you're probably already following them, or you're not following them for a reason because you don't like them too much. But anyways, my thoughts like on this review. I it's kind of like disingenuine. You know what I mean. Calm down. But like, he talked about difficulty, but like 90%, 95% of this footage is like him playing with a team. It doesn't matter if it's AI or actual people. You're playing with a team, which makes the monster hunts a lot more easier, right? But my thing with difficulty, hear me out. Hear me out. I feel like make it doesn't matter. Okay, it kind of does matter, but difficulty, they could patch this in with the day one patch. We don't know what they're gonna do, and they can, in game, past the campaign, the monsters could get a lot more difficult. One thing with that, like we've seen the roadmap, and there's not a lot of content there, or at least like, that's coming in the next like few months or whatever. But hopefully they'll probably ramp it up and stuff. But I feel like I said before, I feel like they really want to get more people into Monster Hunter. If the game was a lot harder and made for the veterans and people who played hundreds of hours of Monster Hunter, especially like World and Rise, that's going to exclude like a lot of people and a lot of new people. I feel like, yeah, make the campaign inviting for new players. Okay, post game, show them that there's more monsters to fight, and yes, it's a little more difficult. You're gonna have to pay attention to stuff, what you carry, what you geared, status effects, weapons. Like, you have to pay attention to that stuff. But like I said, like, yeah, a lot of the stuff is a lot more streamlined. That I don't know. I guess I don't mind, but it's like, even with Monster Hunter World, there were some growing pains, and there's a lot of people who won't have to go through that stuff. But like I said, I'm not gonna give this video a like. But if you want, you can go to the video, give it a dislike, or give it a like, subscribe to him if you want. But if you like my opinions or whatever, I don't know if you do. Leave me a comment. Let's talk about Monster Hunter. You know, and by the way, I ordered a 3080 Ti. So I'm going to see how that performs. But let me know in the comments and stuff if you want me to come out with a video before, I start actually really playing the game on the 3080 Ti. If you want to see the 3070 Ti performance when the game comes out and stuff, and I will post a video about that and see if it improved any, because we all know how it performed. I made a video on it, so I can show you and actually talk about the game. I buy these games, for me, because I like playing games, and so you can see how games perform and how the game plays and everything about the game before you make a purchase, because I know a lot of people out there don't have 60, 70 to $100 to buy a game. I really don't either, but I like to show people, to show people you know how games perform and just talk about the game so you can make a informed decision on your purchase, if you like my opinion or if you don't. But anyways, I'm out. Leave me a like, subscribe to me, ring that bell for more videos, and I'll see you next time. All right? Peace.